Hello everyone and welcome to this, my final video of 2019. I am in full-on Christmas mode, as you can tell, not only from the goofy hat, but you'll notice I've got my very fancy tree. That's the Santa Yoda on top. So yeah, let's make sure we got that set. So I'm in full-on holiday mode and I'm ready to just wrap it up for 2019. And hopefully this video doesn't go too long, but my Star Wars video, I really went off on one. That thing ended up being much longer than I anticipated, but I think this one's not going to be too long. Basically what this video is going to entail, it's going to talk about things that I have planned for the channel in 2020 and certain things that I might want to do, both wrestling related and non-wrestling related. And I'm going to do like an end of the year thing, just a few categories, end of the year and a loose end of the decade thing. It was suggested to me that I should do like an end of the decade thing. And I was like, oh shit, I probably should have done that. The problem, if I was going to do that well, I would have had to have prepared for it like months ago and really get my picks down to something mildly respectable. As is, I just kind of pulling stuff from memory. It's like, okay, what were the best things of the decade for specific categories? So my end of the decade thing, there's a real good chance I missed something good. It's just I literally just pulled it from the top of my head and I didn't really have a chance to really fine-tune those lists, but hopefully you like my choices anyway. And but before I get into the end of the year awards, what do I have lined up for 2020 and what are some of the ideas I have for this channel? I want to do the live streams again. I want to do another live stream series. I was going to do a Starcade series at the end of this year, but it didn't materialize. And that's unfortunate because I really wanted to do that, but stuff got in the way. But I'd like to do some kind of live stream series of some kind. I'm not sure exactly. Maybe I'll just wait all the way until like fall of next year and just do the Starcade series I was intending to do anyway. Who knows? We'll see. Other things that I wanted, well, obviously, like, anticipate the first video of 2020 being a review of Wrestle Kingdom. That's going to be the likely option for my first video, so expect that. I'm expecting to really enjoy that show, so hopefully it lives up to my expectations. Well, I say it shows, actually, but because it's a 2-night event. And as far as non-wrestling things go, I've wrapped up with the Star Wars videos. You might get a couple of those, but like I said, as far as doing a regular once-a-month Star Wars review, those are done. I've gone as far as I can go. I've literally read over, God, how many books did I review? I don't know the exact number of books I reviewed, but I did combine a lot of books and like review multiple books in several videos. I think it ended up being over 100 books. Like I'd love to actually do the actual number, but it was a lot. Let's just say that it was a friggin' lot. But as far as non-wrestling material, obviously Godzilla vs. Kong is being released next year. It's been pushed back to November, which that's normally not a good sign. But you know, Godzilla King of the Monsters got pushed back like 12 times. I ended up enjoying that movie, so who knows? And Kong vs. Godzilla is the rematch I've waited almost my entire life to see, so I really want to see it. I have an idea of doing one video, not like a full series of kaiju videos like I did for Godzilla King of the Monsters, but one like specific Godzilla vs. Kong video that I'm kind of toying around with the idea of that would encompass both monsters' entire history. And that's something that would be a lot of fun and something I would enjoy doing. But another thing I've thought about doing, it's actually been about a year, I think, close to a year on the day, since I released my He-Man and the Masters of the Universe top 20 episodes, and I'm kind of getting the itch to do another one of those for another old cartoon show that I watched as a kid, whether it be like, if I was going to do it again, it would be one of the following shows. It would be either She-Ra, which would make sense, because if I did He-Man, it would only stand to reason that I would do my favorite episodes of She-Ra, Princess of Power, the original one, not the Netflix show that... Yeah. Thundercats would be another one. Thundercats was probably my favorite cartoon out of those 80s cartoons when I was really young, and I would really like to do that. Ninja Turtles is an obvious one to go to. Transformers, G.I. Joe, those would be big ones to go to. DuckTales, which is my favorite out of the Disney shows that I watched as a kid. If you can't tell, I'm a huge Donald Duck fan. I'm almost as big a fan of Scrooge McDuck. My two favorite Disney characters are Donald Duck and Scrooge McDuck, so it stands to reason that DuckTales would be one of my favorite, or my favorite show that they did. I would also consider doing something on Batman the Animated Series, because that show was really flippin' good. Even though it's technically not 80s, it was a big part of my childhood. So that would be a lot of fun as well. So if you're interested in another one of those videos, I'd love to hear your feedback in the comments to see which one you'd like to see me tackle. So there is that. But yeah, some big changes coming up for me in 2020. I'm actually starting a new job after the new year. I'm starting a new job. I just put in my notice 2 days ago. And yeah, it's an exciting new position where I'm getting paid a lot more money. Like a lot more money. I don't want to give an exact number, but yeah, the offer they gave me was very, very nice and significantly more than what I was getting paid before. And I'm like, holy shit. Which means I can... God, what would I even like? I mean, I'm gonna save most of that money because I'm a stingy little motherfucker. But it's nice to have that little nest egg. It really is, and that's But the benefit of this job is that it does allow a lot of flexibility with teleworking and work, and they have multiple offices throughout the area, and there's one that's like 20 minutes away from me, and they said you can work from there. That's completely fine. I'm like, all right. Cool. So, easier commute, a lot more flexibility with telework. It opens up a lot more freedom for me and gives me a lot more time to actually work on videos. So if I was going to do something like a top 20, because the top 20 He-Man episode one took forever for me to do because it's just finding time to get it done was just crazy. And I'd like to do something like that again with another show, but I would need the time to do it. So sounds like I'm going to have the extra time to do it, which is good. And it's an exciting job opportunity for me and something that is really, really good. And I've really got a good feeling about this position and everything. And it's the new year is very exciting for me looking forward. So, I mentioned a couple videos ago that I think I mentioned it. My mom was in the hospital for a couple of days. It wasn't anything super severe. She's home now, and we're all going to spend Christmas together, and it's great. So, all of that is very, very good. So I don't remember if I mentioned it or not, but yeah, she's out of the hospital now. It wasn't that severe anyway. It was just something, you get older and things start acting up, and it was just a very basic thing. They put her on antibiotics for a few days, and now she's fine. So looking forward to spending Christmas with her and Dad and the rest of the family. It's going to be great. So, yeah, so I guess with all of that said, let's just get into the Wrestling End of the Year awards. All right, so I've got 8 topics for both. Let me just make sure. Okay, all right. So I've got 8 categories for both Best of the Year and Best of the Decade. And I said earlier I wasn't going to do a worst of anything because I honestly couldn't think of that much that I really hated. Not to where I could do like full on like a definitive version of stuff. And of course, Raw and SmackDown, I missed so much of it that I'm sure I missed a lot of bad stuff. I mean, if I was going to do worst match of the year, it would be The Fiend versus Seth from Hell in a Cell. And Hell in a Cell would probably get my pick for worst show of the year. And Goldberg versus Taker at that one Saudi show is a close second for worst match of the year. But generally, like, I just couldn't think of... I couldn't definitively nail anything else down, so I figured, okay, let's not do worst stuff. It's the holidays. It's Christmas. I'm in a festive mood. I think Hanukkah just started earlier today, so, it's time to be feeling good and happy, so I'm thinking positively. So let's do Best of 2019. Like I said, 8 categories, and I'm going to start with Tag Team of the Year. There were a few options for this. Not so much because everybody did great. I felt like there was a lot of really good teams that didn't quite have great years, but there were a lot of really good teams. So it was really hard. It was like picking a best out of a room full of B pluses for the most part. Obviously some obvious ones that come to mind. The Revival, who, despite them not really doing much with them, the WWE that is, they still manage to be probably my favorite team to watch as far as their work goes. They've just got that perfect old school 80s style. They're the modern day Arn and Tully, and I just love watching them work. They don't always do much with them, but when they're allowed to cut loose, they do really well. Like that one match they had on NXT during the Invasion angle. They're just a great team. The Guerrillas of Destiny from New Japan, who have really come into their own as really the lead team over on the heavyweight ranks of New Japan, and I think they're very good. And then in AEW, you've got teams like Lucha Brothers and SCU and the Young Bucks, who are all really good. The obvious criticism being the, quote, video game style matches that they have. It's like, you can scale back on the spots a little bit, guys. Just scale back a little bit. But I think they make up a very nice core for AEW's tag team division. I don't think any of them really stood out over the other. They were all just kind of on the same level as far as like their work goes. I guess Young Bucks would probably get the nod if I was going to pick a best out of that bunch, because they helped to create AEW. So I think that's definitely noteworthy for them. But I'm going to give Tag Team of the Year to members of the Undisputed Era, formerly Red Dragon, Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly. They've been great, and they've been cutting it up all year long. Typically had some of the best tag team matches of the year. And they're my pick for Tag Team of the Year. NXT's really gold standard as far as tag teams go. So then moving on from that, I've got Moment of the Year. Really, when I was thinking about my favorite moments of the year, the only one that really stood out to me was the post-match of the Cody-Dustin match at Double or Nothing. I don't need a partner. I don't need a friend. I need my older brother and not a dry eye in the house. And it was such a wonderfully emotional moment that was really a perfect capstone to an amazing match. I got to give it Moment of the Year. It made me cry. And if you make me cry, you're gonna get some you're gonna get some love from me. So I thought that's my pick for Moment of the Year. Feud of the Year. Again, it was kind of like picking out of a room full of B pluses. There wasn't like an obvious answer here. There were a lot of feuds I really enjoyed, but there wasn't anything that I really I would say was like, oh yeah, that was definitely the best of the year. Like, I really liked the Jay White Okada feud heading into Wrestle Kingdom and then into WrestleMania weekend and the ROH New Japan show. I really liked the feud between Nick Aldis and James Storm, which was a nice kind of connective tissue and centerpiece of focus for NWA Power. The stuff going on NXT between the Undisputed Era and like the regular NXT guys like Tommaso Ciampa and Finn Balor and Johnny Gargano, all that stuff really worked. I thought Cody and Jericho and AEW was a good like first major title program for them. But if I had to pick a feud of the year for me, I'm probably going to lean on Moxley and Omega, which got improved by the fact that the match got canceled for All Out. And the fact that they had to postpone the match actually allowed them to build it even more. And I felt like, they got some good stuff out of them. And it felt like a huge moment when Moxley debuted, and there was great intensity all throughout the build-up, and it led to a wild and crazy hardcore match that made people vomit and gave them nightmares and everything else in between. So I'm going to give Moxley Omega a feud of the year. Weekly show of the year. I got three options here. AEW, Dynamite, NXT, and NWA Power. The two Wednesday Night War shows kind of feel like they should get consideration here, but NWA Power just has that basic, solid, simple, fun, nostalgic feel. It's nostalgic without feeling like pandering. It just feels good, and it makes me feel really good when I watch it. And I did want to give some love to NWA Power for that. But if I'm going to be honest and give show of the year to something, it would be NXT. And that's not a reflection on Dynamite being a piece of crap or anything during the war or whatever. It's more NXT's been on all year long, and even when it's not at its best, it's still like the most solid show typically when you look at 2019 as a whole. So I would give it to NXT. And they managed to stay good, because one of my fears was when they moved to the USA Network and got 2 hours, I was like, uh-oh. Are they going to oversaturate NXT and ruin it. And so far they have not. So credit for that. All right, then after that, we're going to do Female Superstar of the Year. Now, the obvious answer here is Becky Lynch, and I think a lot of people doing end-of-the-year awards would give it to Becky Lynch, and I can absolutely see why. Main evented WrestleMania. She's basically the top star in WWE at this point. But if I'm going to look at body of work and who entertained me the most as far as female performers go, hands down, I'm giving it to Tessa Blanchard for Impact. Her and Sami Callihan are by far the best part of Impact these days. And I would say Tessa's match with Sami at Slammiversary and the match she had with Gail Kim were Impact's two best matches of the year. And I think she is great. I think she's a great performer. And the only real problem with her is that she's on Impact, which just feels beneath her at this point. And you kind of want her to go to like NXT or AEW to have like a bigger stage for her to perform on. But even on like the main roster, which, you know, I'm sure they'd give her shitty booking, not out of spite, but because they book everybody shittily, it seems. Even Becky Lynch has been hurt by bad booking. She's the top star. But it's like you'd kind of want to see her mixing it up with people like Charlotte and Bayley and Becky and those types. So I think Tessa has done an amazing job, and she gets a huge thumbs up for me. So even though I think most people are going to say Becky Lynch for Female Superstar of the Year, hands down, it was an easy pick for me. And I might be going against the grain here, but I've got to pick Tessa Blanchard. I think she's legitimately great. And I look forward to seeing her match with Sami at Hard to Kill. I'm actually interested in seeing that match. Alrighty. Then from there, we have Male Superstar of the Year. Now, there were a lot of guys that had legitimately great years. Kazuchika Okada is the type of guy who has great years all the time, and I think he's gotten to that point where it's almost like the New England Patriots, where he has a winning season and nobody's impressed by it anymore, where it's like, yes, Okada had a great year. He always has a great year. But it doesn't feel like as surprising when he doesn't anymore, because he's just that damn good. He's become so good he almost can't beat himself. That sounded wrong, but you know what I mean. But he had another great year in 2019. Will Ospreay has been the king of, I guess you would say, cruiserweight wrestling. You know, I mean, he's been the top of New Japan's junior heavyweight division, and he has just had an outstanding year with the matches he's had. And he reminds me of like an AJ Styles, like circa 04, 05, when he was just, because AJ got his foot in the door by being more of a spot monkey type, but then as he started to slow down and got a little bit more nuanced in his performances, you saw the type of caliber talent that AJ Styles really was. And it was really like 04, 05 when he really started to come into his own. And I think Will Ospreay is doing that right now in New Japan. I think he is absolutely outstanding. Zack Sabre Jr., I love watching that guy. He is probably my favorite. As far as straight up ring work goes, he is probably my favorite guy to watch. He is just an artist. The little things that he does in his matches, he gets it better than anybody. And he does it by doing not that much. He can go down and trade holds with somebody and make it the most exciting thing in the world. And not everybody can do that. He's one of those guys that doesn't rely on spots to make his matches exciting. And I think it's remarkable what he can do. I think Bray Wyatt deserves a ton of credit for basically salvaging his career with the Fiend gimmick. And even though they fucked up the Fiend to a certain degree, the fact that he got it over after being butt-fucked so royally the first time around when he got over, it's amazing what he was able to do. And it's like, look, you just let a guy come up with his own stuff and you can make magic. And for a while, the Fiend was magic until they did the red lighting thing. But I kind of, even though I didn't see the TLC pay-per-view, I kind of dig the Jekyll and Hyde aspect to the Funhouse persona and the Fiend persona. So there's something there, and it's still a great character. I just wish they wouldn't do the red lighting, and I wish they hadn't fucked up the match at Hell in a Cell, which was an absolute fiasco in every sense of the word. And other guys that had great years, Sami Callihan, like I mentioned, along with Tessa Blanchard, they are the best parts of Impact and really the main reasons to watch. I think he's been great, and thank God he's the champion now, because he really should have been a long time ago. NXT's Adam Cole. I think Adam Cole has been amazing all year long. Has had the best year of his career. Had some really good matches, very good matches with Johnny Gargano. That rank him among some of the best matches of the year. And generally, he just really comes through whenever he has a big title match, whether it be with Matt Riddle. I just watched this week's NXT earlier today, and that was like Finn Balor's best match in ages. And I was like, Adam Cole, man. Adam Cole, baby. He gets it done. And I think Chris Jericho deserves credit for kind of rejuvenating his career and delivering some of the best work of his career, especially on the mic. And it's amazing how he gets little things over, like a little bit of the bubbly and weird shit like that he just gets over. And it's with his persona and his creativity, Jericho has extended his career beyond to a degree that I never would have expected him to be able to do. And as it turned out, it's like, okay, Jericho was the right choice as the first AEW champion. Where we go into 2010, we'll just have to wait and see. But if I'm going to give Superstar of the Year to anybody, I'm going to give it to Cody Rhodes. Not just for the work he did on TV, but the fact that he was really the one that spearheaded the whole creation of AEW, started his own wrestling promotion this year, in addition to having some of the best matches and feuds of 2020 or 2019. When you look at the stuff with Shawn Spears and the match with Darby Allin and the feud with Jericho, the match with Jericho, his feud with, well, not really a feud, but his match with Dustin, which was amazing. And it's even the match with Sammy Guevara, which was the first match in Dynamite history, and that was an amazing match. It's like Cody knows what he's doing, and he's like consistently been the best part of AEW, and he's the guy that helped bring it about. So I think what put Cody over the edge for me, well, there's another reason that I'll get into in a little bit, but really it was the fact that he put his money where his mouth is, and he started AEW, and I think that's worthy of a lot of praise, in addition to all the great stuff he's done on camera. And I think he's the best part of AEW, both on camera and behind the scenes. Just personal opinion, but Cody's great, and I wanted to give him a ton of love here for Male Superstar of the Year. All right, now we've got two categories left. Show of the Year and Match of the Year. Show of the Year, my main options were the New Japan G1 Climax events, NXT TakeOver 25, which was awesome, Impact Slammiversary, which was a bit of a sleeper hit and kind of an awesome show in its own right. All of those great shows, but I think I'm going to give it to AEW Double or Nothing, mainly because of one match, but also I thought top to bottom, very good show and a great start to AEW, and really got them off on the right foot. So excellent event. I loved it, and it was a promising start for AEW, and hopefully they're able to, I mean, they're still in a phase where they're still kind of working the kinks out and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. Hopefully they continue to improve in 2020, and we have a viable option for a national wrestling show in 2020, I just wish them continued success, and hopefully they continue that success. I heard Revolution sold out in under an hour, which is awesome. But hopefully as things build towards Revolution, we get something really, really good out of that company moving forward. And Match of the Year is going to go to the reason why I picked Double or Nothing as the show of the year, and the reason why I picked Cody as Superstar of the Year. The Cody Rhodes versus Dustin Rhodes match from Double or Nothing. Easy pick, my match of the year. Nothing else came close. And there were some great matches this year from all the companies. There were matches I loved from NWA. They're like Into the Fire. I thought Aldous and Storm had a very good match, for example. There were matches I loved from, NXT seems to have one great match every week, it seems. Adam Cole and Gargano had some of those wild matches, and there's been a lot of great matches all year long, but when I think about it, it's like, it's got to be that one because it made me cry. It was just, the emotional investment I had in that match was unlike anything I had in anything else this year. So when I was picking a match of the year, it was like, this was the easiest pick. It's Cody and Dustin. One of the most emotionally charged matches I think I've seen in a dog's age, and just amazing from start to finish. And a beautifully told story with that awesome moment at the end that also made me cry. So great stuff. And it was nice. I was really happy for Dustin that he had that performance at this stage of his career. That's because you could tell that this was the match that those two always wanted to have with each other, but they just couldn't because of reasons. And they went out there and just did everything that they ever wanted to do, and the end result was something fantastic. So props to both of them for that, but especially like props to Dustin for showing that it's like, oh yeah, he still got it, doesn't he? And so all of that really, really worked for me. So now I'm going to go into my basic bitch. Again, best of the decade, I'm pulling this purely from the top of my head. So I might not even, I might actually get around to watching footage throughout the decade and then disagree with my picks later on. But moment of the decade, I had two options. CM Punk's pipe bomb, which melted everybody's TV screen because it generated so much heat. Probably the promo of the decade, if nothing else. And the end of the streak, the end of the Undertaker streak at WrestleMania 30, the reaction to it in particular, and it felt like the most historic thing that happened in the decade. So I think that deserves a lot of love as well. So which one was the better one? I don't know. Again, I'm just pulling things from the top of my head, so we'll call that a tie. Feud of the decade, I'm going to give that to, and this might shock people, I'm going to give that to... It's also a tie. I'm going to give it to CM Punk versus John Cena and Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Okada and Okada versus Omega, which yielded some of the best main events of the decade. But I think Punk and Cena, they were so polar opposite of each other that, and the online smart mark jaded fans really love Punk, and the kids all love Cena, and the good boy WWE fans all love Cena. I think there was a natural chemistry there that created some interesting stuff, which started with the pipe bomb. And it felt like every time they locked horns, it was just perfect. And Tanahashi and Okada, who were like the Rock and Austin of New Japan when they were having their matches, specifically their trilogy at Wrestle Kingdom, which was just great. And Okada and Omega had some of the best matches I think I've ever seen in my entire life. Those were amazing. And I still say their second match at Dominion, their first Dominion match, is probably the best 1 hour match I've ever seen. So take that for what it is. So those are my picks for feuds of the decade. Weekly show of the decade, I had one option. And because this is the final time I might be able to praise the show, I'm going to go ahead and take it. I'm going to give it to Lucha Underground. It's a shame that the show didn't get the ending that it deserved, but while it was around, it was fun, it was exciting, it was different. They knew how to build stories, and it was fun to watch them build stories. They took a style of wrestling that I would have never expected to work, and going for the more cinematic TV show style, and they made it work beautifully, and it looked like... And it was so funny because other wrestling shows started to rip it off like crazy, like WWE started to rip it off and Impact started to rip it off and various other things. It's like, but none of them could do it as well. Like, none of them could do it as well as Lucha Underground did. The things that they shot and the special cinematic segments that they did and the way that they built up to matches and stories and feuds were just amazing. And it was a delight to get to watch that show. And I really wish we had gotten that 5th season to kind of wrap everything up. But... it is what it is, unfortunately. But since it's the last time I'll get to praise Lucha Underground, I'm going to give Lucha Underground Weekly Show of the Decade for its uniqueness, its creativity, and for the excellent stuff that it did deliver. Tag Team of the Decade, I'm going to give that to the Young Bucks. Some people might disagree with that. And there are other great options out there like Red Dragon, Fish and O'Reilly and The Revival and things like that. But I think the Young Bucks... by proving that they could be a draw and be an act outside of the WWE, I think they kind of rejuvenated kind of a love for tag team wrestling. Even though there were many Bucks matches that made me because I criticized them as much as anybody. It's like they're just having the same exact match every single time. What is this? I don't get it. But the fact that they were able to become such a huge attraction. And they have shown that they can work. That's the other thing. It's like, oh, they do know how to tell a story after all. Like that one Wrestle Kingdom match, I think it was with Roppongi Vice. And I was like, oh, look at that. They can actually work. But they can actually have really, really good matches. I wish they would cut out the spotty stuff once in a while. But for becoming the attraction that they became and then helping to start AEW, I think they deserve a lot of credit for that. So I'm giving them Tag Team of the Decade. Female superstar of the decade, I'm going to give that to Becky Lynch. I think Becky Lynch has gotten more over than any female performer, possibly ever. Well, not ever, but she's gotten to a point where she's the top star in the WWE, and I think that deserves, in a when nobody ever expected to see something like that, where a woman would legitimately be the top star of a company. So again, I think a lot of praise and a lot of credit is deserved on Becky Lynch's behalf. I think she did very, very well for herself, and I'm giving her female superstar of the decade. Male superstar of the decade, a couple of options. I've got Daniel Bryan, obviously, who was the feel-good underdog story of the WWE when he was at his peak. Kenny Omega, who rose through the ranks and became the hottest free agent outside of the WWE, hottest wrestler outside of the WWE. Pentagon Jr., who kind of won me over in Lucha Underground and became like this huge Lucha persona and became one of my favorite guys to watch. I think Brock Lesnar, even though a lot of people might not like the part-time aspect and some of the repetitive nature of his matches, I think Lesnar became a legitimate attraction and works a style that separates him from everybody else to where everything he does feels special. And I think that can't be understated. So I want to give Brock some credit too. But my pick for male superstar of the decade goes to Kazuchika Okada, the Rainmaker, the guy who probably had the greatest world title run I think I've ever seen from anybody. And that's saying a lot because I've seen Ric Flair. So, when I think great world title runs, I think Okada's reign, his longest reign, I think really stands head and shoulders above a lot of other reigns out there when you look at the great match. And he showed he could work with just about anybody. Like, you could put him in there with Bad Luck Fale, you could put him in there with Suzuki, you could put him in there with Kota Ibushi or Naito or Tanahashi or Omega, and chances are it was going to be amazing. He could make any situation work, and he is also very charismatic and cool. He's basically, if I had to describe Kazuchika Okada, he's basically Randy Orton with none of the negatives. Like, he feels like he has all the pluses of Randy Orton with none of the negatives, which would be kind of a temper and a bad behavior and, stale, boring, repetitive matches at times. Like Okada he is a world champion in every sense. I just love watching the guy. And so when I think of the best stars of the decade, Okada was my easy pick for Superstar of the Decade, even with the runner-ups I mentioned, who all deserve a ton of praise themselves. I think Okada really took the cake for me. Show of the Decade, this one, there is no one answer because I had to sit there and think, and I was like, God, what was the best show of the decade? I have absolutely no idea, but I can tell you, if I was going to pick a show of the decade, it would be either one of the Wrestle Kingdoms, one of the Dominions, one of the NXT takeovers, or one of the Ultimate Luchas from Lucha Underground, because those were really like the shows that I typically loved the most. Ever since I started Wrestle Kingdom 9, or I started watching New Japan with Wrestle Kingdom 9, Wrestle Kingdom is typically one of the better shows of the year. Dominion has become one of the better shows of the year. And then when Lucha Underground was around, their Ultimate Luchas were typically awesome and some of the best shows, especially the first one and the third one. And the NXT takeovers, I mean, the consistency speaks for itself. It's like we look forward to them all the time because they're almost always great. I think the worst grade I've ever given to a takeover is a B, and even those are kind of rare. So it's yeah. So if I was going to pick a show of the decade, it would be one of those. I can't off the top of my head pick like a best one, but it would be one of those. And match of the decade, again, there was a lot of options here. I was thinking about Cena versus Punk for Money in the Bank, which is probably the most emotionally charged match of the decade. Bayley versus Sasha from that one takeover where Bayley won the title, which had me on the verge of tears. It was beautiful. Cody and Dustin from Double or Nothing deserves a lot of praise. Some of the matches from Lucha Underground that I really liked, like Pentagon and Vampiro, and the No Mas match between Sexy Star and Mariposa, and which I gave that match of the year when that happened. So, a lot of great matches this year. The Okada-Tanahashi matches, many of the matches from the G1 Climax, AJ versus Okada. So many great matches over the decade. It was hard to pick one, and I'm technically not picking one, but if I had to pick a match of the decade, it's going to be the Okada-Omega trilogy, specifically the Wrestle Kingdom match and the two Dominion matches, because I think it's about as perfect a trilogy as you could ever hope for, and they had some amazing matches. They started off great with Wrestle Kingdom, then they had the 1 hour draw at Dominion, which I've said is the best 1 hour match I've ever seen. Then they had the match that went over an hour and culminated with Omega finally beating Okada and winning the title and putting an end to Okada's historic reign. So the Omega Okada matches really took the cake for me, and it's like those are my personal favorite matches of the decade. When I think, and again, there's a lot of great options out there, but those are the ones that really won it for me. So that concludes this video. It was shorter than my Star Wars video, which is good. So yeah, that's it. I'm done for 2019. So I will see you all in 2020. Thanks again, everybody, for all the support that you've given this channel. I know I'm not exactly the biggest YouTuber around these parts, but for something that I do largely as a hobby, it is fun to have people that to converse with and talk to, and see what you guys are interested in me talking about. Because really, the goal with this channel was always to not to be like a major success and not to turn this into something that I could live off of, but to just do simple, basic coffee table type of stuff where I could enjoy talking about it and you all can enjoy listening to me and we can have discussions and all that other fun stuff. So that was always the goal with this channel, and I've continued that, and I will continue that in 2020. And I look forward to having you all join me in 2020 because I'm going to do plenty of really good stuff, I promise. Because wrestling looks like it's going to be very interesting in 2020, and starting with the 2-night Tokyo Dome event, which I'm really looking forward to. I cannot stress how much I'm really looking forward to that. So thanks again, everybody, for watching. I appreciate the support always. It's the holiday season, so Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. Happy whatever holiday you celebrate. Happy holidays to everybody, and have a happy, wonderful new year, and I wish you all good fortune and an excellent 2020. But that is all I have for you now. Thanks again, everybody, and I will see you all next year.